Thank you very kindly. Please have your seats. My respected Toshaos, the great indigenous leaders of our country, and we know that the leadership from our Toshaos and the leadership of our communities is in great hands when we see the transformation that is taking place and a number of young people that are now putting their hands up and providing great leadership for our villages and communities. I want us to put our hands together. This is a very good sign, and this is an important part of the evolution of leadership. But before I proceed any further today, I think this gathering perhaps is one of the most fitting gatherings to pay tribute to an outstanding son of the soil, Dave Martin. And I ask us all to stand in a moment of reflection, prayerful reflection on this great icon and legend of Guyana and the Caribbean. I thank you. Chair of the National Toshaos Council, executive members of the National Toshaos Council, Toshaos, members of cabinet, members of the diplomatic community, heads of our joint services, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all the different heads of different agencies of government, children, young people, those who we cannot accommodate in the dome but are listening to us downstairs, all of you, good morning and welcome to the National Toshaos Council Conference, which is the most representative forum of indigenous people in our nation. Let us understand that the NTC is the custodian of indigenous people's hopes and dreams and a protector of their rights. You are all here not by guess, not by accident, not by gift. You are here because you were elected by your communities as leaders for your communities. You're not here brought together through financing mechanism with any self-interest or any political interest. You are here because you presented to your people a plan of action in which they believed in you and they elected you to ensure that plan of action brings betterment for them. So too is this government here. We were elected by the people of this country. We were elected by people from your community because we presented to them a plan of action, and they believe in that plan of action, and they wanted us to implement that plan of action. You're not here at the mercy of any organization. You're not subjected to any other organization or any associations that are being formed with political narrative. You are responsible for your communities, and you are leaders who we respect totally and completely. The NTCC is not just a body of leaders. You are the voice of our indigenous people. A voice that must not shy away from speaking out and adopting bold positions on matters that directly impact the lives of indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples' empowerment begins with you, National Toshaos Council. One of the key ways in which government is supporting this empowerment is through our support to the NTC. The government is also committed to working with you, not just for you, in realizing a vision of development that respects your cultural identity. For us, your future must be anchored in heritage. Let us never forget that the future we build must be rooted in our heritage. Very important. The heritage is not just a part of your identity. It is the fount of strength, a source of pride, and a foundation upon which to build a prosperous future. And this was not always the case. And today, because of the narrative, because of the deliberate attempt to reshape the history, struggles, aspirations of the indigenous people, I have decided to spend a lot of time with you this morning for us to factually go through, for us to factually examine different phases of the history of the development of our country and the development of our indigenous communities and our hinterland communities. And to examine factually the policies and programs, to examine factually the results, and then you will determine what is what and who is what. As people of faith, whatever you do must be founded on principles that govern your decision making. One of the most beautiful things about indigenous communities that I enjoy is your sense of nationalistic pride. You're all patriots. When you go to a community in the hinterland, you would not do anything or start anything before giving thanks and praise to God and understanding that we are all children of a greater being. And then you'll follow that up with honor to your country. And then you'll follow honor to your country with honor to your culture and heritage. That tells us something, that fundamentally your belief system surrounds God, country, and culture. And this is an example that we should all take as a country. This is an example that you show every single time you gather together, that we should all examine as a country and adopt, because it's an example with great benefits. And especially for international friends. I think it's important that you too have a good understanding of the historical evolution of development, especially in the hinterland community. So today, I wish to examine four different periods in the history of our country, so we can have an understanding of policy making, of governance, and then I want to examine the truth. We believe strongly in democracy, and I believe every entity must have the opportunity to speak freely, democratically, and openly, and any government I lead would hold this as fundamental. This is a core principle and belief of the People's Progressive Party Civic. But equally important is that your hands must not hide from who you are. If you're political, you're political. If you're a political entity, you're a political entity. But do not hide under the veil of NGOs and these things. That is hypocrisy. And I will examine factually, some of these things this morning. Factually. And then you make the determination. As leaders, as people, you make the determination. Let me start with a period pre-1992. And why I use pre-1992? All of us know 1992 was when democracy was restored in our country. 1992 was when all of us, those before us, worked and overcome the period of dictatorship, and our country was infused with democracy once again. And how beautiful democracy is, how beautiful freedom is. And that is why anywhere in this world where democracy and freedom is threatened, we must speak out and speak up. We must join countries in speaking out against undemocratic rules and principles, and in situations where the will of the people is trampled upon, our voice must be the loudest. Our voice must be the loudest. So the period pre-1992 is a period where Guyana was characterized by neglect. I don't have to tell you, the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, highest level of indebtedness, social services non-existent. But in all of that, it was a period of the greatest marginalization of our Amerindian brothers and sisters. You were largely left out of Guyana's social and economic development, leaving you in a disadvantaged position. And that's a statement of fact. How do we know that? Let us go to the facts. Let's start with political exclusion. Amerindians were underrepresented and had little influence over national policies. Your needs were inconsequential to the PNC government at that time. How do we know that? Let me show you. Your affairs were handled by a department within the Ministry of Regional Development. That is where the affairs of the Amerindian people of this country was handled. The indigenous people, the first people of our country. Your affairs were handled by a department in the Ministry of Regional Development. And guess how many staff you had in the department? One staff. The head of department. Statement of fact, young people. Statement of fact. And what services were given? It's important because I'm going pre-oil, oil, all I'm going to do this morning. While absolute poverty in our country was above 45%, during this period, our international friends, absolute poverty was above 45% nationally. But you know what was worse? You know what was worse? The poverty, absolute poverty among the Amerindians, among the indigenous people, was almost 80%. Let's do this lesson of history today. Absolute poverty at a national level was just about 45%. But among indigenous and Amerindian communities, it was almost 80%, my brothers and sisters. This is not what I'm saying. This is part of the history of our country. In other words, 7 out of every 10 households in the hinterland region, well, 7.9, almost 8 out of every 10 households in the hinterland region were faced with absolute poverty. This was the state of affairs. This is the history. 8 out of every 10 households pre-1992 was faced with absolute poverty. Most Amerindian villages had no access to formal education, primary schools, trained teachers, sanitation facility. For a matter of fact, no scholarships were awarded in Region 1, 7, 8, and 9 prior to 1992. You hear that? No scholarships were awarded. This was the PNC government. In 1991, the secondary enrollment ratio in the hinterland region was substantially less than half of the national average. You're talking about marginalization. You're talking about discrimination. As a people, our Amerindian people, indigenous people, your ratio of enrollment in secondary school was less than half of the national average. You didn't even have secondary schools. Were those strategies and policies deliberate in nature? It's a question that must be answered. Young people, today we have an opportunity to examine some very important history. That's a good background music to push this. As a result of this, our Amerindian young people never had the opportunity of dreaming of a secondary education. You never had the opportunity of dreaming of a university education. You never had the opportunity of dreaming to become a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer, an engineer, an architect, a specialized forests, in urban planning, in water treatment, in the environment. Today, you're not dreaming, you are achieving. Today, our older leaders could have been what you are. Pay homage to them because they were left neglected and marginalized. The People's Progressive Party fixed that. That is why today we can achieve what we are achieving. Healthcare services were similarly sparse, with very few health centers. And trained personnel, doctors, almost non-existent. In the whole country, we had less than 200 doctors. So imagine what the indigenous people went through. In the entire hinterland regions of Guyana, riverine and hinterland region, we had less than 12 health centers. Less than 12 health centers with less than 3% functioning. That was pre-1992. In all of these regions, we had less than 195 beds. And out of the 195 beds, less than 25% of them had mattress. So you had wooden cots, not beds. This is the history. This is the facts. Let's write the history. Let's understand the history. This is where we came from. In 1990, less than 25% of the population in hinterland communities had access to safe drinking water. Less than 7% had access to sanitation services. %20 of the household in region 1, 7, 8, and 9 were reliant on kerosene lamps. The rest, darkness. That was the situation. Let's talk a bit now about economic exploitation, marginalization, and isolation. The Amerindian communities were excluded from mainstream development activities. Their geographic isolation contributed to their social and economic marginalization. That is in their literature. They thought it was too expensive and too far to visit and service the Amerindian communities. As a result, the Amerindian people were often subjected to economic exploitation with little support for economic development or access to markets. Today, my friends, when we go to your communities, coming from a situation like this, you can stand up and ask for ATVs, tractors, trucks, solar farms. You can stand up and ask for scholarships. You can celebrate teachers and doctors from the community. You can celebrate tractor with implement. And most of all, you can tell the head of state and the cabinet frankly how you feel about them without fearing anything. You can tell the president, you didn't visit us often enough. That is a sweet feeling of freedom against oppression. And we will always welcome that feeling from your community. Your land rights were not recognized, nor were they protected. And you decide, examine among yourselves what took place with your culture. Zero provision was made for your cultural development. One writer said there was a deliberate attempt at the suppression of Amerindian cultural practices and language. One historical writer wrote that. Let us examine what took place after the rebirth of democracy, the return of democracy in 1992. A different period now. We move from the PNC, AFC, because they're one bundle of joy. I'm moving now to the PPP civic government. No oil, a broken economy, 98 cents on every dollar to repay debt, lowest secondary and primary enrollment rate in the world. Let's listen to the story. What took place? Without oil, in the period of the People's Progressive Party civic government, the capital expenditure to Amerindian community increased 25-fold. Isn't this commitment? Isn't this love? Isn't this a government that cares? 25-fold. Without oil. As a result, we saw a tremendous improvement in health, education, housing, water and sanitation, roads, bridges, agriculture. I believe you want me to give you some specific examples, so I'll do that. Indeed, the per capita investment, that is the investment for every man, woman, and child, in region 1, 7, 8, and 9, what we invested in each of you to improve your life was an average close to 3 increase by an average of 3,000%. When we took an undemocratic country, a democratic country in 1992, before we even found oil, we invested in each member of the hinterland and riverine community, each indigenous community. We increased the investment for every person by 3,000%. Brothers, sisters, isn't this commitment? Isn't this commitment? And let's look at political inclusion and governance, because some of these people like to talk about that. Political inclusion and governance. The Amerindian representation in government and local government improved. Why did it improve? With the establishment of the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs. From a department headed by one person, staffed by one person, to a ministry. One of the most dynamic ministries in our country. the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs. Created by who? The People's Progressive Party Civic Government. In 2003, the PPPC government passed legislation that established the National Toshaos Council, which continues today. Where are the writers on governance? Where are the writers on inclusion? This is not accidentally left out. This is deliberately left out because there is a deliberate strategy to rewrite the history. We'll not allow it. It is in 2003 that the People's Progressive Party Civic Government passed legislation that established the National Toshaos Council, which continues today. That was not all. It was the PPPC that created the annual forum to have our Toshaos participate in the decision-making process that continues today. This forum was created by the People's Progressive Party Civic Government. This program will continue to be here as long as the people of this country would have the People's Progressive Party Civic Government. Yes, the next subject I'd like to talk about is land rights and recognition. Where is the head of land? Oh, Irfaan. On to something special. Robson, you work a lot in these communities. You should write the history. That's the problem when y'all don't write the history. Land rights and recognition. The new Amerindian Act of 2006 was a landmark piece of legislation that provided legal recognition of Amerindian land ownership and outlined the process for demarcation and titling of Amerindian lands. Who did that? Not the 28 years of dictatorship and the 5 years of planning to rig. I see my good friend, the Honorable Schumann. Happy you turned up today. So the Amerindian Act of 2006, young people, my young scholar from Brickdam, you will sit with me and we'll write together, right? Beautiful. In 2015, we ain't talking about oil yet, you know, Ashley, because there's the story to carry in. In 2015, 17 villages were legally demarcated, amounting to 4,175 square kilometers of land, legally entitled communal land for more than 14,000 Amerindians. Who was in government? Who did it? The truth and facts will start shaping the narrative of this country. We have to start doing this. Otherwise, the same people who try to steal an election, the same people who try to justify that 32 is greater than 33, the same people will come back. The Holy Book tells us, be careful of who come back. Because some will come back claiming they're Christ. Jerry, stay close to the church. See the Mexican ambassador look perplexed. My friends, you didn't know this. In 2015, 17 villages were illegally demarcated. 4,175 square kilometers of land was legally titled to the Amerindians. Let me hear you. Let me hear the leaders. Let me hear you. You're not going to clap for that? This was not a gift. This was the struggle, the combined struggle of your ancestors and a government that uplifted the struggle, the People's Progressive Party civic government. And we must be proud of that combined accomplishment. We must be proud. See my paper getting mixed up now. Let's talk a bit about cultural revival and protection. They talk about this too. This is another subject matter of the displacers of history. Today, we celebrate every year. We look forward for the Indigenous Peoples Month celebration. When did this happen? When did we dedicate 1 month of heritage for the first people, the indigenous people of this country? It was in 1995. You talk about love, respect, and we did not only dedicate the month, we budgeted resources to support cultural activity. We budgeted resources to support community activity. Talk about cultural revival and protection. And I just given a taste because Marcia removed 75% of what I wanted to say. The PAPC government did not stop there. We designated September as Indigenous Peoples Month to preserve, honor, and recognize the contributions, language, culture, and heritage of the indigenous peoples of Guyana. We then budgeted resources for the revival of the language. We don't talk it, we do it. Huh, Frank? You want the 5 minutes? Yes, Frank was the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports. He would tell you that we even created dictionaries for indigenous languages. Don't believe they can lecture us on these things, because we have a history of doing and accomplishing. And every time you come to this parliament, members of cabinet and members of parliament, dedicate 4 minutes to this. Dedicate 4 minutes to history lessons. Important. Youth empowerment and employment, that's the next thing. That's the next. I'm speaking before oil all the time, you know. Before oil, let's talk about youth empowerment and employment. Before oil, more than 2,000 young people were hired as CSOs. The initiative was part of the Youth Entrepreneurship and Apprenticeship Program launched by the Ministry of Army Affairs. Before oil. And imagine after oil, they fire all of them. You come into that period. That's the third period. Health. Remember I told you earlier, prior to 1992, almost non-existent supply of medicines. Before oil, medicines and supplies availability improved to 70% and peaked at 80% in 2010. 70% availability of medicines in the hinterland region, peaked at 80% by 2010. And what did we see? Reduction of mortality rates and increase in early detection of illnesses. In education, Priya, want some coffee? Priya is my friend, you know. We serve young people together, right, Priya? You know, Priya was the president of the National Presbyterian Youth Arm. We'll give her a round of applause. My friends, hello. She's very much Let's go to education. I described a period when no scholarship was given. Before oil, hundreds of scholarships were given to Amerindian communities and Amerindian children, resulting in doctors, medics, nurses, health workers, teachers. From zero, we could have celebrated medics, doctors, teachers, engineers, media personalities. Oh, I forget that. Michelle, sorry. Your villages and your communities went on from zero to producing the best and finest in our country. A minister of Armenian Affairs that became the Minister of Foreign Affairs, that is now our permanent representative of the United Nations. That now chairs, that went on to chair the United Nations Security Council. Mercy. That is the power of education. That is the power of investing in you, the people. That's not all. Without oil, the government introduced the Because We Care cash grant. An initiative which saw $350 million in the hands of parents and children of our indigenous communities. Without oil, power and electricity. The PPPC government launched the Hinterland Electrification Program without oil. You forgot that. Y'all remember this? We launched the Hinterland Electrification Program without oil, providing electricity to Madhya, Mabaruma, Kwakwani, Letem through power generation. How easily we can forget these, eh? The first tranche, when was the first tranche of solar household, the solar system we brought in? 2011. 2011, brothers and sisters. The discussion wasn't even maturing internationally about solar household power. And we brought it. We brought it to the hinterland and indigenous people without oil. Human services. In 2009, the Child Care and Protection Agency was established that offered direct support. Priya, you were there. Direct support to the hinterland communities. Targeted support. Financed it. In 2005, I talk about economic exploitation. that existed in the community. We launched the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act, was passed. If we were not committed to these things, would we go to the parliament and pass the act and set the legislative agenda? The old age pension payments without oil were introduced to the hinterland. The Ministry of Tourism was created. Let's go to tourism. The Guyana Tourism Authority was established, leading to official work program designed to support indigenous communities through training and marketing. The Rupununi Rodeo began to gain recognition as a major tourism product in the early 2000s. These things did not happen by accident. Private tour operators commenced operations to attractive hinterland locations, creating new economic activities for community. That didn't happen by accident. By support and investment. We launched without oil the Hinterland Housing Pilot, the Hinterland Housing Subsidy Program, the Black Tank Program, the Hinterland Water Harvesting Program. Without oil. Hundreds of families were given houses. The sanitation program to build septic tanks and what we call proper washrooms was launched between 2009 and 2014. Thousands benefited from hinterland and riverine communities. And forestry. What's going on? The compounded annual growth rate stood at 5.5%. This is the history. Let's move on now. Period 2015 to 2020. Five years of plotting and action. Is it working? Thank you. Okay. Is this one working? All right. How much y'all miss? I don't mind. I'll go over. The period 2015 to 2020. A period of destruction, stagnation, and disrespect for you. And I'll prove the disrespect. Huh? I'll come into that, man, like you want to jump past me. Tell me, brothers and sisters, how many new surveys were done? How many new titles were given? How many absolute grants were given? They went back to the pre-1992 strategy. Nothing. It was only the surveys that we started, and they did not even complete it. Ask yourself a question, young people. Doesn't this tell you something about philosophy and policy? Doesn't this activate your minds to think deeply? It should. And when the Amerindians complain about the way the APNU AFC The way the APNUAFC manage the Amerindian land titling is sitting minister of the government labeled the first people. You can say it now as, no, put on the mic. I give you a moment.
Avaricious.
Exactly. On the floor of this house, on the floor of parliament, got up and described the indigenous people of this country as avaricious and refused to apologize. We got up and asked him to apologize. He refused, and all of them sitting on the government side laughed. Oh yeah, well, tell them the meaning, man. Take a next moment.
Avaricious means greedy.
That was the disrespect. That is what they thought of you. Put on the mic, Truman, tell them.
I was the vice chair of the National Toshaos Council, and I was there.
And you asked for an apology publicly.
Not granted.
Not granted. Can you imagine? Never apologize. Just like they're never apologizing for their attempts to rig the elections. And just like they're never apologizing for trying to justify that 32 is greater than 33. And they come as the virtuous people of truth and belief and honor and dignity. The Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, without consultation, was renamed to the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs. I'm going through it. This is with oil now, you know. All this happening with oil now. 2,000 CSOs were fired and their money taken away. The Because We Care grant was extracted from your homes and your pocket. This is with oil. This is an oily situation. Ambassador, I miss Parliament. 2,000 CSOs' jobs were taken away. The Because We Care grant was grabbed away from you. 35,000 children and their parents suddenly became poorer. The grant extracted from their hands and pockets. It's pickpocket. As a result of this one extraction, every year, your community lost $350 million. That is at the rate we left it, 10,000. Today, we brought it back, we took it to 40,000, and it'll get it to 50,000. $350 million extracted annually. Using the number we left. I wouldn't even lose the number we got now. They get bad feelings. Using what we gave when we left. That is, they took away from you in that 5 years, from your children, $1.7 billion. $1.7 billion that we left for your children, they took it away with oil. Remember, I just told you, without oil, we took medicine availability to 70%, and in 2010, 80%. With oil, in that 5 years, medicine and medical supplies availability went down from 70% to 40%. This is with oil. Medicine availability went down from 70% to 40%. They stopped the training of local health workers, carried out limited diagnostic and infrastructure work, reversing the gains made in the period leading up to 2015. Sports, non-existent. I dare them to tell you what they spent on sport. You'll be shocked. Guess what? The scholarship that was zero, that we brought back with oil. The scholarship for indigenous people declined by 27.6%. And they say they love you. They say they're the champions of your right. And in all of this, in the take away of the grant, in the firing of the CSO, in the reduction from 80% to 40% in medical supplies, in the reduction of scholarship by 27.6%, where was the APA? Where was the voice of the APA? Where was this independent organization? Where were their voices? Why were they silent? Why were they complicit? The only voice was the NTC, who stood consistently. The only voice that stood consistently on principle and in representation of the Amerindian people was the NTC, and I salute you. Schumann was there. And I'll give him recognition, although he cost me up too. It is this NTC that is subject to all kinds of abuses. It is this NTC that is subject to all kinds of abuses that stood consistently. Not a word from this so-called independent APA. But the truth always exposes the agenda. Suddenly, the head make an easy, deliberate, successful transition to political leadership. And they say they're independent. But where were their voices? Ask yourself, why was the silence? What? Let me correct myself. Why was it deliberate silence? I got some other stuff. I'm going to come back to it. Let me make sure I put it in a corner. Come back there. That was not all, Priya. With oil, 71% of the textbooks needs of the region were not met. With oil, they're reversing gains we made without oil. 71% of all the textbook needs were not met. Go consult the Auditor General report, you will see it there. Huh? They imposed VAT on hinterland travel. You remember that or you forgot? That VAT was introduced on hinterland travel. You know what that did to you? Every year, it extracted $600 million from your pockets. $600 million every year it extracted from your pockets because of VAT on hinterland travel. So for the 5 years, they extracted $3 billion from your pockets. They imposed VAT on machinery and equipment. And guess what? The annual growth rate that we had in forestry moved from 5% to negative 5.5%. Negative 5.5%. They threw away the LCDS. Right, Vanessa? No telemedicine. Health spending per capita was struggling, limping massively behind the national average. Let me fast forward. With your help, with good people who believe in democracy, the People's Progressive Party Civic was returned in 2020. and we were returned in COVID. We had to battle COVID for almost 2 years. Battled 3 major floods, a major drought, the highest prices, increase in prices for world transportation, the highest prices for food globally. We battled all of that. And here is what we were still able to do. We came back. We removed the VAT on local air travel, putting back $3 billion in your pocket, giving you $3 billion saving right away, off the bat. And what did we see? As of June 30th, 2024, passenger traffic is 48% increase over 2023. 48% increase over 2023. More people are visiting your communities. More spending is created in your communities. But more importantly, 50% increase in cargo movement over 2023. 50%. Education, from a reduction in the percentage of scholarship going to the hinterland, 16% of gold scholarship is now given to hinterland communities directly, representing almost 5,000 of the 29,000 we have given. 5,000 of the 29,000. From the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs support to secondary education, I'm not talking about the tens of billions you're spending, Priya. I'm just talking about the additional support that comes from the Amerindian Affairs for pocket allowance, dorms allowance, and these things. Almost $500 million we invested. And we have an increase from a decrease of 27.6%. We now have an increase in Ministry of Public Service scholarship to the hinterland by almost 21%. Who love you? Who care about you? Who invests in you? These are the facts. In 2024, the hinterland will benefit from 28 new nursery schools. That's right, right? More? How much? No, tell me. How much more? Right. 42 new nursery schools. 42 new nursery schools. I'm going to repeat it. Your regions are going to get 42 new nursery schools. How many new primary, Priya? I'm not even going to what we build. They build nothing. And secondary schools. 16 new secondary schools with major dorms, lab facility. We have trained close to 500 teachers already. Right, Priya? More? How many? 743 of your teachers trained in the hinterland. Priya, I'm working a strategy. You put on the mic and see it.
Yes, thank you, sir. So we currently
No. How many teachers we train? Just say it.
trained already 743. We have 100% of our teachers in the hinterland either trained or currently in training.
You hear that?
That's never before happened.
You hear that? Lend me your ear, for I come here to bury the false narrative and the untruth. The Because We Care grant that was taken away. But I don't have to tell you the story. It has been returned, increased, billions of dollars in the pockets of your children, and I assure you, you will get the $50,000. Hundreds of millions of dollars in hinterland school grants to ensure teachers and schools have the right, the assets that will support learning, the learning aid, the learning material. Hundreds of bills directly transferred to the schools. Never before. Hundreds of millions of dollars invested in textbooks to ensure your children have access to textbooks. Smart classrooms being created. And by the way, I've instructed the Ministry of Education to ensure that all the classrooms that require the dish and the digital support mechanism, all of it is completed within 8 weeks. All of it. And let me say this. I've asked the Minister of Finance to examine ways in which small contracts, those $10 million furniture contract, little road contract, fence contracts, can be done right in the community, where you in the community will do it yourself. So in the new program of works, all those work will come directly and will maximize the labor in your community. And I have one more announcement to make, so you will invest that resource that I'm going to talk about. Our health spending per capita outpacing, when you look at capital investment and current investment, outpacing, not only matching, outpacing the per capita investment in the rest of the country. Because we have to work harder in our communities to ensure the gap that was left there is reduced as fast as possible. Building modern facilities, ensuring, we have said, the Ministry of Health and Education have a task within the next 14 months to ensure that every single health center and education facility, they are painted well, they have good washroom facility, they have good waiting area facility, and they are accommodating to people and provide good customer service. The mapping exercise has been completed, and within 14 months they have to finish every single facility across the country. A total of 32 health posts, health centers, and district hospitals are already upgraded. 600 health workers were added to Region 1, 7, 8, and 9. 600 health workers, which include 200 community health workers. The availability of medicine and supplies gone up back to 85%. 85%. We now have ambulance, ATVs, boats, medical evacuation system readily available to the hinterland community. We have the eye care voucher, HPV screening, dental care service being rolled out directly in your villages. In recognizing and ensuring all hinterland communities get access to emergency care, an average of $154 million is invested in medical evacuation flights. So far, we have conducted more than 1,500 medical evacuation flights between 2020 and 2024. 1,500 medvac flights to support your communities. Isn't this care? Isn't this commitment? Isn't this love? We have introduced telemedicine to 36 sites. Let me go on. Let's talk about the LCDS. They came into government and they threw out the LCDS. All the hard work of Pradeepa, Vanessa, Sham, The entire team. The entire team. All the LCDS persons here, team members, stand up, please. We didn't bring the whole team. Give these people a big round of applause. They are the best in the business of forest management. Not in Guyana. They are the best in the world. Take it from me. The government has updated and expanded the LCDS. We came back. We did not only bring back the LCDS, we updated and expanded the LCDS. Under the revised LCDS, the government was able to secure a landmark purchase agreement with Hess. Through this agreement, Hess will purchase $750 million of carbon credit between 2022 and 2032. In 2023, US $150 million was received from Hess. And guess what? 15% of this was allocated to 242 indigenous villages, a total of $4.7 billion. $22.5 million, $4.7 billion was transferred directly to your villages. Isn't this trust? Isn't this honor? Isn't this dignity? Isn't this recognition? Isn't this belief? We did it because we believe in you. We recognize you. We honor you. And we are committed to you. That is why. And my friends, as a result of this investment, over 800 transformative projects are on the way in villages, which has resulted in growth and development, expansion, building of eco-lodges, tourism facility, agriculture facility. All of this is ongoing. All of this is ongoing as a result of this investment. Now I want you to listen carefully. This year, the total revenue received from carbon credit sale is $87.5 million, which is less than last year, right? So your 15% should be less because it's $87.5 million. But because we are a government that care and love you, because we are a government that believes in giving more and not less, we have taken a decision to allocate 26.5% of the earning this year to you. Although the agreement is 15%, we do not want you to get less than what you had. We have increased the percentage of this year earning to 26.5%, ensuring that you will get no less than what you got last year. You will get $23.2 million or 4.84 billion Guyana dollars in your villages, directly transferred to your villages. Isn't this love? Let me hear you. Isn't this love? Yes. Isn't this honor? Yes. Isn't this commitment? Yes. Isn't this belief? Yes. We believe in you as much as you believe in us. And let's go on, because we love to talk about land titling. Since we came back, we are working on 13 areas. 9 villages demarcated and received the certificate of title. And this does not include the 4 villages that have now accepted the certificate of title. Under this administration, another almost 8,700 Amerindians have legal title to their land. Just a couple of years ago, the period 2015 to 2020, nothing We couldn't do surveys during the period of COVID. So the pace at which we wanted to go was tremendously affected. Yet, we have 14 titles. Right, Pauline? Including those that we're in processing now. Youth empowerment. $4.2 billion expended in youth empowerment. We did not only rehire the 2,000 CSOs, we have now rehired almost 2,800 CSOs, $3.5 billion transferred to young people and villages. This is a history. More than 1,300 CSOs trained, 62 CSOs in tourism, trained in garment production, small engine repairs, tractor driving, solar installation, ICT servicing. And through the investment fund, the Marine Investment Fund, we've invested $1.7 billion in 220 communities. Through the presidential grant, we've invested more than $1.6 billion. The support for agriculture development, more than $1 billion. This is outside of the direct transfer. Water transportation, almost $600 million. The construction of the National Toshaos Council Secretariat, almost $128 million. Chairman, you have a cocktail there tonight? Oh. Now you're going to your own head office. In water, since 2020, we've invested more than $3.4 billion. And a further $1.5 billion will be spent in 2024. We have doubled coverage to 83%. We are targeting 93% of all regions by the end of 2024. More than 75 new wells have been completed. 40 new wells are being completed in 2024. And investment in sanitation is also being aggressively pursued. We have delivered 30,000 solar PV home energy system at a cost of almost $1.8 billion. We have commissioned a new 1 megawatt solar PV farm in Latem. This investment alone would have saved the authority there 3,966 drums of diesel. These are the investment we are making. To further strengthen energy security in the Region 9, we are constructing a 1.5 megawatt hydropower plant at Kumu and a 0.7 megawatt plant at Makamaka. Investment of $2.7 billion. Isn't this commitment? Isn't this bridging the gap? 31 solar mini-grids are being installed all across Region 1, Region 2, Region 5, Region 7, Region 8, Region 9, and Region 10. All of these regions will benefit from different degree of mini-grids. Outside of that, the GGMC would have spent almost $9 billion to maintain important hinterland road links. 4,614 kilometers of road network maintained. The Ministry of Public Works spent almost $20 billion on construction of roads. For the first time in the history of our country, communities are getting asphaltic road, concrete roads. It's amazing. When I come to your community now, you're not asking for a trail, you're asking for concrete roads. You're asking because you believe that we can deliver it. You're asking because you're seeing it. You're asking because you know you deserve it. You're asking because you know you have a government that will support you getting it. And together, we will do it. I told my ADC to ensure I don't speak beyond 30 minutes. What are we now, 27? 27. road infrastructure, ICT, tremendous investment. 140 hinterland and remote communities have access to the government Wi-Fi now. 109 grants valued more than $407 million was invested in the hinterland for the construction of ICT hubs. And all the hubs that are currently waiting full operationalization will be completed within the next 6 months. All of them will have all the facilities. And you guys know when I say something, what happens, because I visited many of your villages. Forestry, from negative 5.5 growth back to 5.5 positive growth. Human services, 2,000 hinterland residents trained through WIN, right, Bindi? Increase of more than 60% increase in old age pension since 2020. Over $7 billion spent to date on old age pension, disability assistance, and public assistance in your communities. Free distribution of wheelchairs, spectacles to the hinterland. Hundreds of millions of dollars spent on enhancing sports facility and supporting sport program. Hundreds of millions of dollars spent on housing. New regional hospitals are being built. Billions of dollars being spent. $4.5 billion spent on food security, improving and expanding agriculture. These are the investments that we are making to make your life better. My friends, we must all, it is okay to be critical, but we must speak from where we are. My only problem is that you cannot claim to be independent and apolitical when you are indeed fully political and not independent. And let me give you the facts. In 2013, I will not call the organization name. I'll give you the facts and ask you what you think if someone did this. Imagine you're running a country. And in 2013, an organization write the IDB and World Bank to stop loans to come to your country for development. That organization love your country? Where in the world would an organization that claim they love the people, love the country, and are nationalistic, where in the world would that organization write organization and say to the organization, I want all loans, grants, money coming to this country to be stopped? In the same year, in 2023, after you come with the world strategy and LCDS that is world celebrated, the expanded LCDS, we are now co-chairing the Commonwealth Committee. I'm going to go to, I shouldn't say it now. Let's keep it as a surprise. I see people look at me, no. We are now leading again on forest management and carbon. And we are working aggressively to ensure that we are the leaders on biodiversity. Tremendous work is ongoing there now. Imagine in 2023, when our entire forest will be certified and we will earn money that will come to your community that I announced just now. An organization would write asking for sanctions to be placed against our carbon credit sales. They are the patriots. Imagine they would write to stop payment. That is the greatest form of colonization. What is our heritage? Your heritage. that has the potential of transforming your life, they would write to stop or block the carbon sale. Actively advocating around the world for Guyana's carbon credit program to be stalled or discredited. They've approached international bodies, casting doubt, baseless, on our programs, despite all that I've said. My friends, this very organization, when your jobs were taken away, when access to medicine fell to 40%, when your scholarship reduced, when investment in your community was reduced, said nothing. This very apolitical organization, when democracy was under threat, said nothing. I have no problem. We welcome openly criticism. We welcome open dialogue. But you have to do that letting the people know who you are. If you're a political commentator, you're a political commentator. In my opinion, the APA has no shape, form of being apolitical. They have consistently represented political interests and took political side. That's my humble opinion. Today, I was in communities across the country. They are creating, because leaders come to me, and they're telling me they're creating organizations under the name of different entities, business entities, and so on. And those organizations are writing your Toshaos and your village council to dictate to them what they can do and can't do. You are the elected representative of your region, and you are not subject to any of them. Don't be fooled. As I said, I love them. But if I love you, tell me who you are. You can't tell me that you're apolitical when all your action is aimed at political support to one entity. Don't insult our intelligence. So I close by saying to you, we welcome openly freedom of speech, democracy, but we also want you to know, all the good books tell us we must know the messenger and understand the message. I have a special announcement. Under the AP and UAFC, they gave a transport in record time at the lowest price in the history of the country for the highest asset, the most valuable asset we had during the 5 months. Today, I am pleased. Where is the Toshaos from Karasabai? Who else is here from Karasabai? Yeah, the whole district, the whole district. Y'all stand up. How are we this morning? Put on the mic, Toshaos. I like hear your voice, man. You forget, y'all sprained my ankle in Karasabai? Good?
Yeah. Yes, I'm feeling okay.
What's the most important thing for your district? Now,
Our land title, or demarcation.
and when was the survey completed?
The survey, Your Excellency, was complete sometime last month by a surveyor and his team that were there.
All of us the same thing? And when did they say you'll get the when you're getting the title?
Well, we were told that they will be within a short period of time upon their return to Georgetown.
And that's your biggest issue. Well, I am pleased to tell you that your plan was registered this morning. Your minister issued a letter this morning, and I have your title in my hands. God bless you. Thank you.